before the new library, what did your day-to-day life look like?
I wasn't even coming to the library back then. It wasn't a library really, you know. So I was just basically just sitting in my dorm waiting for a court date to come.
As highlighted in the program, this effort began with a vision to revitalize the space and has grown into a vibrant resource, now serving hundreds of patrons and housing thousands of books.
This space, as you can see, is more than a library. It's an investment in learning. It's an opportunity to have dignity and the possibility to have second chances.
When I got here, the library was stuffed full of books, but they were really old books. They had never been cataloged. And as I started to go through those books, I realized most of those books were from the 90s.
Carts of books stored in supply closets do not make a library. A beautiful, well-lit, airy space that has books that are freely available and accessible says we trust you, we value you, and we know that you will make great use of this space.
So we now have 3 days a week when we're open, and we get about 50 guys in here a day.
Oh, is that my hold over there?
Chairs got pulled out, the old chairs, and the new stuff came in, the tables, and then everybody came. And now this place is just full. They built us a good environment in here for us to come in here and take us away from the troubled camp out there. A lot of just BS, you know what I mean? We come in here, it's peaceful. It's got a good aura around it now, you know, straight up.
Well, I'm most proud just again to have access to the materials that are surrounding us here for a population that normally would not have that access. The books, the material, the learning environment. I think it is very, very exciting, and I'm proud to be part of it.
So now this place gave me the education to where I can step out now and join this college. You know, I'm now a full-time student.
Folks that take advantage of libraries while they are in custody are significantly less likely to recidivate or cause further harm when they return.
When you bring partnerships like this together with purpose and a belief in human potential, things can really start to happen. And for me, I would say it represents hope, opportunity, and the belief that every person deserves that chance to write a better chapter in their life and their story.
This is a community that's worth investing in because this is our community, and this is a great moment. Thanks.
You're welcome.
I will call this meeting to order just as soon as the vice chair arrives. Good morning. It is 10:01 on Wednesday, May 27th, and I am calling to order this meeting of the Public Safety and Justice Committee. We will begin right away with public comment. This is the portion of the agenda set aside for members of the community wishing to address this committee on matters not on today's agenda, but within the purview of the committee.
Okay, and before I call members of the public up for public comment, I just want to state for the record that we do have quorum. Supervisor Lee, or Vice Chairperson Lee, is here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have one individual on Zoom and 4 in person for
All
public
right.
comment.
With 5 speakers, we'll keep it at 2 minutes per speaker.
2 minutes per speaker.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Omar Araza, Jesse Mejia, Irvin Tatum, and Stacy Casada. Can you please approach the podium? You may speak in any order.
Sorry, is it the order we were called in, or
I'm sorry?
any order? Or
Any order, fine.
Any order? Okay. Good morning. My name is Jesse Mejia. I'm the program manager for SJSU's Record Clearance Project's Path to Expungement Mentoring Program, also known as SJSU Service Navigation. Our program, operating out of SJSU, hires former Record Clearance Project clients to provide services to individuals coming out of custody, both jail and prison here in Santa Clara County. We've been working with diversion and reentry services since before 2019, and we've had a grant with them, but we were recently notified on May 5th that that grant would be coming to an end. It was a substantial portion of our budget, and as a result, we will likely be having to close our services down. We've already notified clients, but what we would like to prevent is having clients have to retell their stories to new service providers. Clients connect with their mentors because of the similar past lived experience, and to ask them to have to reshare their story can be traumatizing. So what we ask is if the Board of Supervisors can please identify alternative funding within the budget to at least help us in this transition period while we identify other sources of funding. We also feel that it should be important for our program to continue because other programs under diversion and reentry services that offer similar services to our program are all faith-based aligned, and the county residents should have an alternative for those that don't want a faith-based program. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Omar Raza. I am a recent law school graduate, and for 4 years, I served as a case manager with the Path to Expungement Peer Mentoring Program and as a project assistant with the Record Clearance Project, working directly with over 400 clients. I have also worked in federal and local prosecution and as a federal judicial extern in a chamber that handles a criminal docket. I have seen this issue from multiple sides of the system. And from every one of those angles, I can tell you without hesitation, this program works. And I want to briefly describe how. Before a client was released from custody, I would interview them inside the facility. We identified their immediate needs, we built a post-release plan together, and on the day of their release, someone was there waiting in the lobby, a mentor or a staff member. I watched those clients walk through those doors and see a familiar face, and their relief was immediate and it was visible. From there, we provided transportation to the Reentry Resource Center, and we helped those clients obtain identification, access basic supplies, and connect to services. We coordinated with the Public Defender's Office so that courts could feel confident knowing that a responsible support system was in place. The mentors in this program have lived experience. They have built trust with clients and credibility with every agency involved, and that does not get rebuilt overnight. I urge this board to support transition funding for the Path to Expungement Mentoring Program. June 30th is closed. Please act. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Urban Tatum. I'm a formerly incarcerated person who spent 36 years in prison. I'm also a client of the SJSU Service Navigation Program. And coming out of prison after spending such a significant number of years incarcerated, I came out into society a little bit afraid. However, my case manager, Stacy Casetta, she was very instrumental in helping me navigate through this space to receive these glasses that I'm wearing, helped me with my job resume, helped me learn how to articulate myself when seeking prospective employment. I'm gainfully employed right now. I have transportation, and my life is stabilizing because of the program services that they help me navigate around in this city, as well as individuals like myself. They've spoken to me about how they struggle with trying to reintegrate into society, and they spoke very highly of this program. That's how I got introduced to it, because other programs in the county wasn't as robust, you know, with respect to services that they needed. However, my life is great. I feel like it's a blessing to have a second chance to live in a first-class life, and with the help of the SJSU Service Navigation Program, has helped me get my life on track, and I'm no longer afraid. They embraced me with open arms. They didn't judge me. They didn't look down upon me. And the case managers they have are very good mentors because they have lived experience, and they understand the fear of coming into society. And they help dispel those fears within myself, and I love it, and I'm proud to be a civilized human being and living amongst you guys in this community. Thank you very much.
Hello. So my name is Stacy Casada. I am the lead mentor at SJSU Service Navigation. We also have another name called Path to Expungement. I've been with the program since 2022. We mentors, I also have here Conrad and Jen. We've had the pleasure of building rapport with our clients as they leave custody. They do trust us because they know that we've been in their shoes. So we help guide them like as we were guided by mentors that we've come across. This program has paved a way for countless clients. Our graduates have become many things. Some of the things that they have become are like firefighters, social workers, carpenters, caregivers, SLE managers, college graduates, and much more. We help people build their careers and lives. We do this by helping our clients believe in themselves. We meet clients at the reentry, at Elmwood, at Main Jail, and also in the community. We help them create personal goals and plans to achieve them. We are there to congratulate them on their successes, and we are there for them when they need our support. We have an amazing team that knows how to make a difference in the lives of people who need our help. If we receive transitional funding from the county for another year, we will have the opportunity to find other funding to be able to keep assisting clients in our community. So please allow us to do so. Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move to Zoom. Our speaker is Ben Z. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You have 2 minutes.
we had a recent meeting in the for the budget, and it was proposed that we remove control of the Child Advocacy Center from District Attorney Jeff Rosen. And today I'd like to voice support for this. Jeff Rosen is helping to conceal the sexual abuse of my children. After I told him about the sexual abuse, my son, he confirmed that my ex-wife was letting a man rape him beginning when he was 13. There had been unnecessary bathing with the children. There had been sexual contact between two of the children. And this all caused my children great distress. They became anxious. They complained about not having friends. They became depressed. I mean, it's just terrible what happened to them. And I reached out to Jeff Rosen personally, and I asked him if he could provide a screening for my children at the Child Advocacy Center. I've asked him at these meetings. I've asked him by email. I mean, he just ignores me. And I don't think that a person who does these kind of things should be in charge of the Child Advocacy Center. He already did this when Sal Duran worked at the Parent Project at the District Attorney's Office when there was concerning behavior. He never provided a referral to those girls to get a screening at the Child Advocacy Center. He never reported it to CPS. And in my case, you know, he filed charges against me in order to discredit me after I told him about it.
All right, sounds like the speaker has finished. The county recognizes that the topic the last speaker addressed, childhood sexual abuse, can be emotionally challenging or even triggering for some listeners. California law prohibits the disclosure of information related to an investigation of suspected child abuse or neglect. As a result, by law, we are not authorized to speak to the specifics of any particular case or the results of an investigation in that case, including when allegations are made as part of public comment. California law requires child welfare departments to immediately cross-report physical and sexual abuse of children to law enforcement and the district attorney so that swift action can be taken when needed. The public should be assured that our county takes all allegations of child abuse and neglect seriously and takes appropriate action, which includes rapid and cross-agency responses to such allegation by the Department of Family and Children's Services, local law enforcement, the Child Advocacy Center, and the district attorney. We're going to move to the consent calendar now. And I would like to add items 4 and 5 to the consent. I'd like to add item 4, the report from the Office of the Sheriff relating to the 2025 Annual Use of Force Report, and item 5, the report from the Office of the Sheriff relating to the Restorative Services Division. I want to extend my appreciation to the Sheriff and really make a special recognition of appreciation to the Restorative Services Division. That would be my motion.
Yes, testing. This is not working. Oh, this one. Let's try this. Yes, I would be agree. I will go and second that motion and okay with item 5 being on consent, but also want to say the great work to the Retro Voters, RV staff for the work that they're doing at Elmwood there, and hope that we can extend that service to Main Jail as well. I also want to say great work on reopening the men's library at Elmwood. Thank you.
Thank you. Items 4 and 5, to be clear.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Thank you so much. Did we have the video running before?
We did, yes.
Thank you. So ahead of the meeting, as hopefully you all saw, we showcased the video of the Elmwood Library opening, and I did have really just the great pleasure of attending that ceremony, talking with both the folks that made it possible and the gentlemen in custody who were clearly very excited to be able to use the library, to work in the library. We had participation from community college partners, and it really was just a tremendous experience. I also want to extend my gratitude to members of the Community Correction and Law Enforcement Monitoring Committee for their very thoughtful work plan. The work to balance public safety with accountability and transparency is truly no small task, and the willingness of our members to dedicate their time and energy to this vital work is deeply appreciated. So, with appreciation all around, Do we have any comment, Sheriff? Before I go to the public, go ahead,
I would
please.
just like to say thank you to you for being present. That was a great ceremony at the
really
library.
was.
And it's a team effort without question, but I do want to recognize our program manager, Riley Johnson, who's with us today. He even dressed up and put on a tie, so I think it's very
So
commendable.
stand up so we can
Yeah.
recognize you properly.
He's done.
We don't want the tie to go to waste.
No, he's just done a phenomenal job filling in for Dr. Child while she's been absent. So thank you, Riley, for that. And like I said, thank you, Supervisor, for being with us for that opening of the library.
It was really beautiful. Thank you. Do we have public speakers on the consent calendar, which now includes items 4 and 5?
There are no requests to speak in chambers or on Zoom.
All right, then I will. I did make a motion to approve the consent calendar. It was seconded by Supervisor Lee. Let us vote on that.
Vice Chairperson Lee?
Aye.
And Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. That takes us to item 6, which is to receive a report from Custody Health Services relating to operations and the California Advancing and Innovating Medi-Cal Justice-Involved Services, otherwise known as CalAIM-JI.
Good morning, Chairperson Ellenberg and Vice Chair Lee and members of the committee. Rocio Luna, Director of Custody Health Services, and with me to my left is, why am I drawing a blank? Linda Rodriguez, who's our Director of Mental Health Operations, and then to her left is Dr. Daly, our Medical Director of Psychiatry, and of course, Michelle Delacaille, who oversees our CalAIM Justice Involved initiative, as well as our discharge and planning activities. While we don't have a formal presentation, I'm going to have our team give you just a few highlights and then answer questions for you this morning.
Perfect.
So we'll start with Michelle with CalAIM, and then we'll go to Ease, if that's okay.
Hi, good morning. Michelle Delacaille. I oversee the CalAIM Justice Involved Initiative and Pre-Release Services. The report is before you, and we're really proud of the work we've been able to do, and we've gotten some recent recognition, and we're happy that we're still on track, and one of the first in the state, which is leading to the first state in the country, and there are now another 20 states, I believe, that are in different stages of processing their similar waivers to CMS. California submitted their waiver renewal in May, and they are waiting for CMS to approve that. They do anticipate approval of the next round of this waiver, but they are also anticipating a lag time for CMS to respond. Because there are multiple states with similar waivers, they do anticipate it to be approved, but they are anticipating a little bit of a lag time in there. I don't have an estimate on the time frame, but we do anticipate it to be approved beyond the January 2026 date.
Could I interrupt just to ask a quick
Sure.
clarifying question? The multiple states, I hate to make it political.
Red and blue states.
Thank you very much. Good. And are we
submitted-
making a concerted effort to all do it together?
There is a lot of work across the country to try and learn from California and implement similar waivers across. So yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then I'm here to answer questions
Okay.
as needed. Dr. Daly?
Good morning. I'm Dr. Daly and here to talk about the EASE program. It's Early Access and Stabilization Services. It began in March 2025 when we partnered with the Department of State Hospitals and began being reimbursed by the Department of State Hospitals for the care that we provide for the patients that are on the wait list to go to the state hospital for competency restoration. And it's been fully up and running for just about a year now and has been going really smoothly. And I'm here to answer any questions about that.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I think we've got this sorted out now. I am Linda Rodriguez. I'm the Director of Custody Health Behavioral Health Operations. In partnership with Dr. Daly, we've really spent a lot of time focusing on the APU and really working to provide really robust treatment there. I'm not saying that we haven't always done that, but there's always room for improving the quality of care that we provide there. And in this past year, we've been able to add additional social workers to the team that works there to really round out the multidisciplinary approach. And I think we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting as well, but we've been able to fill all of those positions, and we've really seen a lot of fruitful treatment planning coming out of that, a lot better care coordination as these patients are transitioning from our APU down into our SMUs. And so we're really hopeful that the increase in multidisciplinary support and follow-up is really going to help this population with maintaining stability while they're in our care.
We're happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. I'm going to look first to see if we have members of the public wishing to speak on this item.
There are no requests to speak on this item.
Okay, great. Public Defender, do you want to make the first comment?
Thank you. I just want to take a quick moment, and I may have shared this in the past, but I've had the opportunity to watch Michelle Delacaille and her leadership in the CalAIM project. And I will say, I've seen this at the state and even in a national context. We are a leader. Michelle is in particular a leader in the state, and just want to acknowledge it. It really highlights the great work our county does, the leadership in the county, and Michelle's work. We should be very proud.
We are indeed, and I'm going to pile on a little bit. Thank you all for the report, and I just also want to add how proud I am that even with the devastating cuts we're facing to core safety net and health care services, which are, of course, the very services that keep communities safe and healthy, we are still pushing forward with the innovative, meaningful work that the CalAIM Justice Involved Initiative represents. So I will add my congratulations to you, Michelle, to Rocio, to the core team, all our employees and system partners for the recent recognition. You alluded to it, but not in a sufficiently flexy way. So I will say that there was recent recognition in the New York Times and in the statewide From Incarceration to Care report. So congratulations on that validation as well. The things that you all do every day, making sure our clients are connected to substance use treatment services, helping them to charge their phone when they are leaving custody, supporting them in getting a photo ID. Some of these may seem small in the moment, just meaningful on a human level, which should be enough, but also from a criminogenic standpoint, research shows us that giving people real support as they leave custody is one of the most effective ways to help them reintegrate successfully and ultimately reduce recidivism. So your work directly strengthens our communities, and I'm very grateful for it. I have a couple of questions. Now that we've had a little more than a year's worth of data on claims and implementing CalAIM JI, I'd like to see going forward more standardization for this annual report. I appreciated that last year's report distinguished how many adults versus youth had their Medicaid eligibility or JI code activated. This year's report includes information on the number of reentry care plans that were developed for patients. What I'd like to see going forward is kind of standard year-over-year metrics, especially data that would help us better understand how these services are impacting patient outcomes, including recidivism. Michelle, interested to know if this is something you're already thinking about, and would love to see you work with my office maybe to develop a set of key metrics that we can compare year over year for the next update.
Absolutely, we can work on that. I do have a lot of ideas around that. The state and the claims data is a bit flawed, so we need to work in partnership with the state as well to ensure that we're capturing everything in a consistent and robust manner. And so that's still a work in progress. with the state, as the state has been diverted to do a lot of additional counties going live, a lot of variation across the state.
Right.
And so getting that standardized is important and delayed. So yes, I'm happy to work with your office on streamlining that and making it robust.
I appreciate that, thank you. And would you provide to the Board of Supervisors a quick off-agenda report when we learn about the status of the waiver renewal, whenever
Sure.
that happens?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'm going to shift to Dr. Bailey, the Early Access and Stabilization Services Program and the incompetent to stand trial population. Though it might be Greta or the court might want to address the questions as well. We've historically had challenges with not having enough court-appointed evaluators to conduct competency evaluations. Has that situation changed or improved? Greta?
Oh, go ahead, Your Honor.
I was just going to say I don't have any information about that today.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Greta, do you have?
I don't, but I know that there are folks actually in chambers who might be able to step forward either from the district attorney's office or the public defender's office to provide some insight on that. As folks who are kind of new to this conversation will recall, a key challenge there is, of course, just the overall shortage we're experiencing statewide and particularly locally of folks with the sufficient and required certifications and expertise to do those evaluations. The court's more limited financial resources to compensate the folks who would potentially do those evaluations at competitive rates, which is a challenge not only for our court, but I know for courts statewide. But in terms of the kind of current state and whether we've seen any progress on that front, I don't have that data at my fingertips, but I'm wondering if there are folks, I'm seeing a little bit of shake of head, so we can maybe bring that back.
Great. I see Sylvia Perez-McDonald, alternate public defender.
Yes, so we are part of the special committee that exists with the court, working with Judge Piano in this committee and trying to address this specific question. And Greta is correct. The key challenge is the recruitment and retention of qualified examiners at the rates that we currently have. So currently we're working with Judge Piano to compile data and information across all counties in terms of what the rates are, and hopefully having a conversation and a proposal about where that disparity is. But I can tell you in the private sector, the doctors obviously get paid at rates of, $500 or more an hour. And at the current rates that we're paying the doctors, it is very, very small. And so as a result, that's creating a significant challenge. But the bigger question that we've worked on, though, is ensuring that we are putting people in line for those examinations, only those that really require it. Because if we have high demand and we have only a few qualified examiners, then we're going to have a lot of people waiting for those evaluations. And historically, that has been a very significant problem in our system because most of our clients that are very vulnerable are in custody and waiting for those evaluations. And the court and the parties cannot litigate the competency question without that expertise and that input. So it's a very significant problem that we're trying to sort of address.
What's the funding source for the examiners?
The court for these evaluations.
Okay, great, thank you. I appreciated in the report the information on jail-based competency restoration services. Are we doing work as well around community-based competency restoration?
Our team wouldn't be, our early access and stabilization team is only patients that are currently in custody, and so I wouldn't be able to comment on what is done outside of custody.
I see Brandon Cabrera from the District Attorney's Office is stepping forward because I think he can provide a little bit of information.
No, please, please. You can come up to the podium or sit down. And Damon, I see that you have your light on too. I'll come to you next.
Sorry, I did not wear a tie today. Did not think I'd be in front of you all. Can you hear me?
Brandon. Yes.
So to answer your last question, Supervisor, currently right now on the panel, there are 7 alienists doing felony competency evaluations. We have 3 pending with the court. So 3 are pending review. Hopefully we'll have that number up to 10 or 11 within the next few months. And then as it relates to community-based competency, that's through the CONREP program. Generally, they can oversee approximately 10 people in the community at any given time. I think they float around 3 to 4 people, though, on average.
If we have people waiting in custody, why would we not?
So they have to meet the individual and do their own independent analysis. Things that they contemplate are, can they adequately supervise that person, public safety, things of those nature. So generally those spots are reserved for someone who is already out of custody, who we don't want to remand and send to the Department of State Hospitals.
Got it.
So that's generally what they're doing, but it is based on their decision and their interview of that individual. But that's the current status right now of both the panel as well as the out of custody CONREP supervision. And I thought, I was texting with one of my, the attorney that does this, and actually one of the things we're contemplating is the Stanford Fellowship Program in order to boost those numbers for individuals to do the competency evaluations.
Oh, that's so interesting. Psychiatric residents?
Correct, yeah, I think it's part of their initial residency that they have to do some forensic programming, and that we're trying to utilize them as a means to have our numbers boosted, using the fellows for less serious cases that we might not need them to testify down the road.
Sure. Interesting. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really
you're welcome.
appreciate that.
The only thing I would add to what Mr. Cabrera shared is, you know, a lot of aspects of what we're describing are really fundamentally controlled by the state. Certainly the amount of funding our court receives that can go towards these resources, the state CONREP program, the state hospital's capacity to take folks that may need to go for treatment at the state hospital. And this has just been an underinvested in area by the state that's caused lots of logistical challenges for justice systems at the local level, and obviously really significant human impact to the folks who stay longer in custody or have their court processes delayed as a result of the lack of investment. So we're not unique in being challenged by this. I think we've come up with a lot of creative ways to try and leverage local expertise and resources to do the best that we can with the resources that we've collectively been allocated. But it continues to be an area where, you know, the lack of capacity at the state hospital, the expectations the state's imposing on local governments, including the county, to essentially absorb the impact of inadequate investment at the state level continues to be a really huge challenge for us all.
I feel like that is a really tired theme of the state underinvesting
Yes,
and
it
then
is.
penalizing counties. Public defender.
I'll try and not be repetitive, because I would echo what I think Greta and Sylvia both already shared, and we would be happy to work with Greta and the county administration to provide additional information. I think there are strategies that we are trying to use in the county, in particular some video conferencing to help expedite or expand, I think, the universe of people to do the evaluations. Also, I think there is work on an internal referral process to potentially expedite the evaluations, which I think is good news. The rates, I think, are just truly a challenge, and I think the work group has found that out. And we've gone through this cycle before. I can remember in the juvenile context having to severely or significantly adjust our rates. As a baseline, at least what I'm told, and I think we should confirm this, is we are waiting probably about 6 to 8 weeks for evaluations, is what I'm kind of anecdotally told, but I would want to confirm that to make sure that that's completely accurate.
Thank you so much. Look, did you have an additional comment?
I just wanted to kind of pile on to the frustration about the state and say one more thing, which is, as I think the committee is aware, the state recently started imposing penalties on counties who have more than a certain number of folks deemed incompetent to stand trial. And, you know, that is illustrative of kind of what we're dealing with, as obviously that's not something over which anyone in this room has control, and it isn't a reflection of the work, good, bad, or otherwise, of the justice partners who are involved in the system. It's just, you know, extrinsic factors. The EASE program, likewise, is something that was really imposed on counties as a result of inadequate capacity at the state hospital, and that's a burden that we've taken on. And as Dr. Daly shared, we've done quite a good job, we think, of implementing that program and modeling for other counties how that can be done well. Yet when we're continuing to ask the clinical teams in custody health, who should be singularly focused on helping people get the treatment they need, get better, but instead do have to divert attention to kind of facilitating what should be some of these state-funded, state-administered criminal justice processes related to mental health. It also diverts time, energy, and resources away from treatment. And so I did just want to add those comments for folks who are tracking kind of the state policy in this vein.
Thank you so much. I'm going to make a motion at this point to receive the report and reiterate my request for an update on the CalAIM Justice Initiative Medicaid waiver renewal when it's available, and a report back in a year with standardized metrics for the same initiative developed in coordination with my office. And would look to a second. And
Yes,
any
I'll
additional
second that.
comments.
It deems like
I'm just going to briefly pile on to Greta's piling on. Very quickly, which is, and also we have this issue with the state not accepting clients and doing an evaluation before they've even accepted them to complete any sort of restoration services, which then mean they end back up in this queue for assessment.
Thank you. President Lee, do you have any additional comments on this item?
I just want to say ditto. Certainly, there's a lot of challenges here due to the budget side, but in terms of the work we're doing, I think that's the message been lost, is that I think our county's been doing really amazingly good work. And we're recognized nationally, the New York Times and whatnot, and that we're working so well by the counties. Yet at the same time, all these challenges that we're seeing right now is not something that we did. It's something that's really from the external sources. We talk about HR1, I'm going to talk about that today, but right now in this case, we're really surprised is that the state, instead of helping us out, is actually causing us even more budgetary issues. So thank you.
You should come to my town hall tonight. Let's vote on this item.
Vice Chairperson Lee?
Aye.
Thank you. And Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Motion
sidebarring.
carries.
Item 7 is to, thank you all again very much. Item 7 is to receive a report from the Behavioral Health Services Department relating to behavioral health jail diversion programs.
Good morning, Supervisors. Megan Wheelahan, Deputy Director for the Behavioral Health Services Department. I'm joined here at the table by Gabi Olivares, our Division Director for our Forensic Diversion and Reintegration Services, Stephanie McWhorter, our Director over our Substance Use Treatment Services, and Margaret Obalor, our Director over Adult and Older Adult Services. We have a report for you showing that we've had between January and March, 261 individuals released into treatment through jail diversion, released into a variety of levels of care, depending on their treatment needs, from residential to outpatient substance use treatment or mental health treatment, including housing supports where needed. We've also, through the work of this team, been able to decrease average wait times from 15 to 21 days on the JAC list, decrease it from 21 to 15 days, yes, on the JAC list, understanding that those are averages, so I don't want to gloss over the concerns of many of the partners in this room, that there are folks that wait longer. There have been partnerships underway between our team and the core team that just presented to review some of those longer stays, although challenges remain. We've also had efforts underway to improve the timeliness of the assessments that our team performs in order to identify who is eligible for diversion and what level of care that they may need. And ensure that those folks are placed into treatment off the JAC list. We've also been able to secure 2 different one-time funding grants, both the Prop 36 infrastructure grant and through a partnership with the Superior Court, the Burn Crisis Intervention Grant. These will fund both infrastructure improvements, as they are one-time, but also treatment expansions that we intend to continue in the future as we plan for the financial situation in front of us. But happy to take your questions.
Thanks so much. Nancy, do we have public speakers on this item?
There are no requests to speak on item number 7.
Okay. Megan and team, thanks very much for the report. I want to ask about the folks who stay longer than the average time, that 15, longer than that 15 days. Are there any identifiable patterns, maybe specific treatment types or levels of care where we have particular limited capacity or bottlenecks? Or is it just overall across the board there, somebody has to wait longer?
Yeah, I'll let Gabby chime in a minute in terms of kind of the characteristics of those clients that are challenging in terms of placement. But for sure, you know, our residential treatment programs are limited because they all have a limited number of beds and they tend to be in high demand. So that is something that we have been working with our team and the courts to really identify what is someone's need in that moment and can that need level of care be reassessed if it's appropriate to send someone to a lower level of care in order to release them from jail and get them into treatment.
So it's the highest
residential,
acuity
residential, intensive outpatient services, which could be those full-service partnerships, assertive community treatment, forensic assertive community treatment, and then also, as we're all pretty aware, the housing resources are limited. So for folks that don't have an option and kind of everyone feels aren't safe to be released into the community, that definitely can be a barrier. As well as the kind of treatment options that are available for certain folks with presenting behaviors. I don't know, Gabby, if you want to say more about kind of, even if there is treatment options available, the people that stay the longest on the JAC list, what the challenges are placing them.
Good morning. Yeah, so we have individuals that have blown out of a lot of placements, are not compliant with medications, have serious medical issues that we struggle with placement. So in order to address that, we're meeting with our providers 3 times a week to look at what alternatives, housing, they've blown out of a lot of different housing placements. We're actually doing a pilot right now with Office of Supportive Housing, where we have some dedicated beds. We're taking that information from the point of the person being incarcerated to try to secure housing simultaneously. So it's people that have struggled, are not compliant on medication, and have been through our system previously or have very serious charges.
It's interesting that they would be placed on the JAC list then.
We still have to serve them as a Medi-Cal beneficiary, and we're still hoping that they're going to recover, that they're going to do well in community, that maybe this is the time where a different provider connects with them. We do case conferencing with the jail now on a weekly basis to identify those high-risk individuals, discuss what can we do differently this time to serve this person.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. Go ahead,
Also,
Megan.
remember on the JAC list, it can be folks in mental health diversion, which is more of a voluntary program, but it also can be folks who are incompetent to stand trial, being diverted from the state hospital, or misdemeanor incompetent to stand trial, so it may or may not be as...
or felony cases.
Yeah.
I actually didn't realize that the eligibility or qualifications was quite so broad.
It's a wide
for that
range
list.
of charges,
Clearly.
diagnoses.
Which helps me understand better why there would be such a range in the amount of time that folks stay on that list. Thank you for that. I have questions about BHSA, but Greta, did you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I did just want to emphasize one really important point that Gabby just made, which is we've been working really hard to increase the ongoing communication between the behavioral health team and the team in custody health, because as you can imagine, as folks are in custody, their needs can evolve as they get stabilized on medication, as they've been getting more treatment from the custody health team. Conversely, the custody health team can sometimes share insights that may not have been apparent in the process through which someone was put on the JAC list about perhaps a higher level of need than could be met in the type of program to which they're currently on the JAC list awaiting placement within. So we are not only working to strengthen those communication pathways, as Gabby mentioned, but we're also going to spend significant time and energy over the summer and into the fall trying to build better communication pathways also with both the Public Defender's Office and District Attorney's Office and the folks in custody health, because one of the things that we've heard as feedback from the custody health team is sometimes there's not perfect alignment between who they would expect to be on the JAC list with what discharge plans and who they see in custody from a clinical lens. And so one of our biggest challenges as we are dealing with an array of obligations, needs, requirements from our custody health team, whether it's related to consent decree compliance or implementing the EASE program, or dealing with some of the day-to-day challenges they experience delivering care within our facility. We continue to also try and figure out ways for them to increase their level of communication with this team before you, but also with the folks who are in court, working with the court to determine what will be the court's ordered discharge pathway for folks who may be able to be diverted from continued incarceration, which is a big challenge because that team is stretched quite thin by that whole array of obligations, but we do see an opportunity there, and that's something that we're really going to be focused on, especially because some of these folks really just are very challenging for the sheriff's office to manage, for our custody health team to manage, but if placed in the right program, sometimes also with conservatorship proceedings initiated, we do think can be safely out of custody.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate hearing that. With the shift to BHSA allocations and more funding going toward housing and FSPs, do we expect that to open additional treatment slots for Jacklist clients?
Over time, yes. At the current funding levels that are projected for BHSA, there is a small amount, a few million, I don't want to say it's small, but small in programmatic terms, that we have available to sort of use to expand, and we're working with our current treatment providers to identify kind of which programs and slots that would be.
Thanks. I'm going to dig into that more at FGOC. I'll ask for an update, particularly on the county's plan for the 3 project proposals that we submitted for Prop 1 bond funding and didn't receive. So between the HR 1 cuts and the lack of state support for those 3 projects, I'm definitely concerned about the impact. Want to understand if there's a plan going forward where we might find the money for that. But I'll make a motion to receive the report.
Yeah, second.
Go to Sheriff Johnson, and then any comments that you have?
No, just very quickly, I was kind of hoping, and I get it, we were in a very, very challenging budget year, but one of the comments that was provided earlier by a member of the public had to do with hoping to find some transitional funding for case management as people come out of custody. And I think especially for this population, that case management is critically important, that handoff when they're released from custody, so they have support during that transition. So just wanted to voice my support on that.
I so appreciate that, and I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had in the last several months that have started with, I know the county has really significant budget challenges, but this work is really critically important, and you are all right, and we are just in a maddening situation. I agree that should be a funded program. We know what the impact is, and there are 100 more that are just as critical. Supervisor Lee.
Yes, thank you so much. It's good to hear that we are trending the right way in terms of the days weighted in the checklist from 21 to 15 days, but 15 days still too long. Looking at the number of individuals that are being released from the checklist with those who are released to either outpatient programs, those to temporary shelters plus treatment, and those who are released to outside BHSD, which in this case I think it was Salvation Army or VA. Looking at that last category, I think number is like 42, and out of 260 or so. So we're talking about close to 20%. Are those all basically veterans that were identified? That's why they could go to that program?
Yeah, if they have a benefit like the VA, we do encourage folks to use their benefit. So we've been partnering more with the Veterans Administration to identify if somebody has that benefit, what's their service connection, and then linking them directly to the VA.
Right, because I'm just thinking that since it's close to 20% of individuals, this is a logistical issue. I mean, I see this whole checklist as a logistical, it's not merely a medical issue. It's really a matter of how do we get the resources fastest. In this case, those who have that DD-214, that VA-connected relationship, they could go straight to another completely well-funded program from the federal government directly. And us here, we just bought 10 Kirk, which is a unhoused shelter for veterans only. So I think these are the type of resources that others are not eligible for technically. And if we know that they are on the JAC list, they are veterans, I would see if there's any way we could identify them sooner so they could get to those services even quicker. And that would help, unclog the rest of the list, I was thinking.
Yeah, it's an added question now in our screening when someone comes in, if they know of any additional benefit that they have. Did they serve in the military? Since we've established a relationship now with the VA, there's also a special calendar. We don't man the calendar, but if it's requested access or that we look somebody up, we will, in order to get that person into that benefit rather quicker than just sitting on the JAC list.
Exactly, yeah. Good.
Correct.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
Vice Chairperson Lee?
Aye.
And Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 8 is to receive a report from the Probation Department relating to use of force incidents in juvenile custody settings for calendar year 2025.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Supervisor Ellenberg and Co-Chair Lee. We are going to be reporting today for the Probation Department. I'm Deputy Chief Jill Ugaldi that oversees institutions. And with me today, I have Probation Division Manager Ashanti Hayes, Probation Division Manager Trina Gauthier, and I have Research Specialist Kim Ho, as well as our Research Specialist Kristen Keller, who's sitting behind and can also answer questions today. So we do have a small presentation. However, if we would like to move to questions, it's completely up to the committee on how you would like to proceed.
Correct.
What is your preference?
I'm okay skipping it. I've read it, so.
We are going to go right to questions and appreciate the presentation. We both did our homework, and I will assume everyone else did as well. Thank you. Nancy, do we have any public speakers on this item?
There are no requests to speak on this item.
Okay, then we'll come back to questions. I do have, and I am going to ask you to hop up to slide 7, if you don't mind. I have a question regarding additional data that I'd like to see included in future reports. On slide 7, here we are, there's a breakdown by race of youth against whom force was used by custody staff. I'd like that data to be broken down a little bit further by month and facility, by month, and include the facility populations broken down by race at that time, because it would be helpful in understanding proportionality. For example, the report indicates that a total of 13 Black youths were involved in use of force incidents. We know that at any given time, the number of Black youths in our facilities is low, but without having that comparator, we can't ascertain what percentage of Black youth have experienced a use of force. And having that additional context, of course, would allow us to really just gain more insight on whether or not there is disproportionality such that we would be able to recognize and respond to that. Is that an achievable request?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So Kristen Keller is going to speak on behalf of the research team.
Fantastic. Thank you and welcome.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So we reviewed internally this request, and because the numbers in the facility are already so small, if we break the if we break the number of incidents down by month and then additionally by race and ethnicity, there is concern that those particular youth could be re-identifiable. So for that purpose, I'm not sure it would be appropriate to include in reports. However, there might be some alternatives we could look at. For looking at a brief, just looking at this data in particular, with the 10% of youth, for example, at juvenile hall who were involved in use of force incidents and who were Black, that is consistent with the percentage of the population or proportion of the population that was in juvenile hall last year. So there might be some other ways that we can present comparable data to address your inquiry.
That's interesting. So the issue is that they could be specifically identified by name because there are so few of them.
Generally, our practice is if there's a population of youth under 10, if the total population, for example, of youth who were involved in use of force incidents per month was under 10, and then we're breaking that down further, that's the point at which it would be.
I see.
Those youth could be.
That could be provided in a confidential memo, or is the board not even able to have that information? I don't think any of us are interested in the specific identities, but is that a
So we
possibility?
can actually take your inquiry and go back to the department and figure out how we can provide this information so that our youth can remain, we can maintain confidentiality for our kids.
Okay, great, thank you. Then I'll move to receive the report and hear back from all of you in what way we can together break that down a little bit more, because of course I'm looking for opportunities for continuous improvement as we do with everything. Thank you so much for that. For Lights, Supervisor Lee?
Yeah, thank you. It's unfortunate to see that the March and April has some of the highest rates of use of force incidents based on the report here. And in terms of why, asking the question, there was the Santana Row incident that has caused these gangs, I guess, retributions or whatnot that's still ongoing. And there is there was the fact that some youths have multiple incidents, and one had actually 5 use of force incidents. So it seems like as much as the number's gone up, we can identify actually very clearly a few individuals has the most use of force being identified, right? So those are the youth that's clearly the most prone to violence. There's discussion of how they have been, interviewed and whatnot. What exactly can we do in terms of further de-escalation or even separating these youths from the rest of them in order to avoid these problems in the future?
So Supervisor Lee, we work really closely with behavioral health. So when any incidents arise, we reach out to make sure that there may be some medical issues, there may be some behavioral health issues, and where we can get support. We also reach out to the probation officer to seek a multidisciplinary team for these youth to come up with individual programming. So everyone is looked at from a very unique standpoint to try and reduce. And as you can see, the trends, the numbers did decrease, but it's very reflective of our average daily population as well. And during those months of March, April, and May, the population was significantly higher.
Yeah, and I'm just concerned because of the fact that we know there are gang violence outside, but certainly when we have gang violence inside our facilities, that becomes our issues. And of course, we want to make sure that we can anticipate these. I mean, the main jail and whatnot and other incarcerated settings, we have ways to separate them and whatnot. So are we doing something similar in our own setting here in juvenile hall to separate them, and how we could de-escalate these in the future?
So per BSCC Title 15, we don't have separation for our facilities. So what we really try to do is we try to modify the programming to ensure that youth are safe, and then we try to work with the individual and come up with individual programming to try and mitigate. We also bring in our community providers that can come in and try to help mitigate what's going on in the community that does trickle into our facilities. But for the most part, we don't elect to segregate, just because when youth are released and we're trying to rehabilitate, they do need to be able to integrate into the community where you're going to encounter many different people in many different situations.
Right. Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other lights, we have a motion and a second.
Vice Chairperson Lee?
Aye.
And Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you again very much. Thank you for the deck and the ledge file. All right, item 9 is to receive a report from the Office of the District Attorney relating to criminal gang activity and prosecution. Your mic's not on.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Irene Williams. As of December of 2025, I'm the supervising deputy district attorney of the gang unit, the district attorney's office here in Santa Clara County. Prior to becoming a supervisor, I spent the last 6+ years prosecuting just gang cases, some of the most serious gang cases within our county, primarily homicides. I prepared the presentation on the semi-annual gang report for the board. I apologize.
That's okay. You can back slightly away.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm used in court, you're told to do it like you're eating an ice cream cone.
Oh, okay then.
So I put together the presentation that was provided to the board ahead of time. For consistency purposes, I tried to mirror the presentation that was presented to the board for last year's Board of Supervisors presentation on this same topic. And so there's a couple of things. I didn't intend to go through this slide by slide. There's a total of 22 slides. There's a couple of points I wanted to note that are included in the slides, and then
Do you want to pull up those particular slides?
I can. 1 second, please. I'm sorry, is there a particular cable to be able to showcase this?
Staff in the back is preparing to share the presentation.
Looks like it's up now, and I think the clerk can advance the slides for you if you ask them to.
Thank you so much. If we can go to slide number 7, please. One of the things the data shows based on the information provided in the report is that our office, the district attorney's office, continued to sparingly utilize, charge the gang enhancement or standalone gang crimes associated to cases. As the supervising deputy district attorney of the gang team, I'm largely responsible for reviewing cases that are referred to the gang unit for a filing decision. So a large part of that responsibility falls upon my shoulders. There are several things, obviously, that go into consideration as to whether or not we charge a gang enhancement or standalone gang charge. That's not to say, it is to say, rather, that there are oftentimes I review cases. I believe a crime has been committed based on the nature of the incident and what I know about the law, but I don't believe it to be appropriate to charge a gang enhancement or a standalone gang crime charge based on what I know the law to be under Assembly Bill 333. If we can go to the next slide, please. So compared to last year's data, my office, the district attorney's office, did again have a slight decrease in the number of cases we filed where we charged a gang enhancement or a standalone gang charge. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this slide presents data as to the breakdown, the racial breakdown of gang suspects, and the very next slide pertains to not as detailed of a breakdown regarding the victims of gang crimes as charged by my office during the reporting period. What's important to note, or what I think is relevant to note, is that it's largely people of color that are impacted, both on the prosecution side, those being charged, and the victimization side, those who are affected directly by these crimes. And that's not to include, by the way, when we say victim, we think of the individual who was a target, who was the targeted was the targeted person. That doesn't include the neighbors or the witnesses in our community. Usually these crimes happen largely within areas where people of color tend to reside, and so they are citizens that are out and about. It's their children that are out and about and are witnesses sometimes to some of these crimes. So when we say victims, that does not include individuals in our community who have an adverse effect from merely just probably witnessing these crimes happen.
Sorry, slide 9, just to reconfirm, slide 9 are the suspects and slide 10 are victims.
Yes,
Okay.
Madam Supervisor, and I did receive in advance a question, I believe from your assistant, related to the specific racial breakdown as to slide 10. And I do have that information, that raw data. The reason why it appears as it does here in slide 10 as opposed to be more detailed as represented in slide 9 is, again, consistency purposes. This is how this data was presented to this board in last year's presentation. In order for there to be a better way or simply a way for comparison purposes, I thought it would be appropriate to do a similar chart reflective of that data as the board saw it last year, if that makes sense.
It does. I'll have some questions at the end of your presentation.
Absolutely. We can go to slide 12, please. One of the things that I believe to be significant about the data presented in slide 12 is the youthfulness of the offenders as it relates to gang-motivated crimes that are being charged, and youthfulness in a sense of not juveniles. So there are a couple of slides in here that account for juvenile offenders who have been charged with some type of gang enhancement or gang crime, but this particular slide is just to individuals that's charged as adults. So it doesn't include, and what we see is that 90% of these individuals were under the age of 30, and that's actually a slight increase from last year's number of 85%. We can go to slide 21, please. So in line with that, the youthfulness of the offenders that we're seeing more and more within the context of gang crimes and gang-motivated crimes that are coming over to our office for filing decisions. Our office are outside of the gang unit. So it's fair to say my expertise lies within the prosecution of gang crimes, but I'm privy to some information as to what other units and measures that are going on in our office are doing in order to try to prevent these individuals from even making it to our unit. And that largely falls within the purview of our community prosecution unit in our community, and their work that they do on a daily basis with our community-based organizations. And the work they do on a daily basis, going into high schools, going into middle schools, mentoring, community outreach, project parenting, the efforts they're making outside the use of law enforcement to be a force within the community to try and be there before a crime is committed, to try to prevent it before it happens. And again, it's a work in progress. I'm not an expert on everything, all the different programs that the Community Prosecution Unit engages in order to try and be prevent more young people from entering the legal system. But I do know there are resources available, and I do know that we work in conjunction with the Community Prosecution Unit where we can in areas to help to try to target young people before they become involved in the legal system. So at this time, I'd open up for questions.
Thanks very much for the report. Do we have public speakers on this item?
We have one request to speak on Zoom.
Okay, let's hear that speaker, please. And if the clerks don't mind, if you could keep the slides up for a few minutes, I'm going to ask questions about a couple of slides.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ben. Ben, I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, it's concerning that only people of color are being prosecuted for gang-related activity. I say this because there are Caucasian people who are who have criminal gangs here in Santa Clara County and are not being prosecuted, are given basically immunity for any crime they commit. This includes physical assaults, breaking into your car, breaking into your home, tampering with your food, hacking, stalking, both physically and electronically. It's just terrible. And sex trafficking, the big thing. Valerie Houghton has her own gang here in Santa Clara County, and she contracts with many of the attorneys here in the county to prolong hearings or proceedings, family court proceedings, and to terrorize people and to do terrible things to their children. And I can't believe that our district attorney is giving her a free pass to do all these things. I mean, they're horrible, horrible things. I mean, I've suffered great bodily harm from their activity, and I can't give my children a screening to get protected from the sex trafficking. And we really need to change it and stop focusing solely on people of color and to imprison people who are doing harm to our community who are Caucasian. Thank you so much for your time.
That was our final speaker.
Thank you so much. Regarding, let's go back to slide 10. I do appreciate the consistency in trying to mirror the report from last year. But going forward, I think having greater detail would really illuminate the specific communities that are more deeply impacted by this category of violence and help us better focus prevention efforts. On slide 14, the math is confusing to me. The total number of offenders charged doesn't match the aggregate adult and juvenile numbers. Is that, are they adults and juveniles unduplicated, but the individuals have multiple charges? Can you explain why that doesn't add up?
Yes, I can. So the actual title of each column, so total offenders charged, that would be office-wide. So of the 40,000 cases reviewed during this reporting period, that is March 2nd, 2025 through March 2nd, 2026, of those cases reviewed, our office charged 592 individuals with assault with a deadly weapon. Of those 592 people charged with assault with a deadly weapon, the juvenile team specifically charged 69 of those. That means of the cases that came into our office that were referred to the juvenile team, 69 of those cases that were reviewed and referred to the juvenile team, the issuing deputy district attorney filed assault with a deadly weapon in 69 of those, on 69 individuals. And it's likewise, the next column of the cases referred to the gang unit for review during the reporting period, 18 individuals. The gang team specifically charged or filed on 18 individuals for assault with a deadly weapon, and that data repeats. And the numbers doesn't add up because it's not necessarily corresponds with a gang enhancement. So just because you're charged with assault with a deadly weapon does not mean you were necessarily charged with assault with a deadly weapon and a gang enhancement.
Oh, so the juvenile, so the columns, the juvenile column and the adults should say gang enhancement, and the first column is all assaults with a deadly weapon?
No, if I can just, it's actually
I
the
see.
opposite.
I see that.
So the numbers that are reflected in the columns do not reflect whether or not a gang enhancement was charged, if that makes sense. So the 69 and the 18 does not necessarily mean all 18 of those individuals were, in addition to being charged with assault with a deadly weapon, they were also charged with a gang enhancement. It's just the actual principal charge, if that makes sense.
Nope. Sorry. who?
Okay, I can try again.
Thank you.
So part of the following decision when it comes to the gang team is determining, one, has there been a principal crime committed? And then if
Let's start with the first. So 592 people are charged with assault with a deadly weapon.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
That's an office-wide number, not including the gang team, every unit in the office.
Everybody.
Yes.
Okay. And then the 69 and 18, what subset of total offenders, what is the description of the subset?
So of the 592 people charged by my office, 69 of those individuals were charged specifically by the by the juvenile team, if that makes sense. So 69 of those individuals who were charged with assault with the deadly weapon, 69 out of the 592.
Okay.
And then 18 out of the 592 were specifically charged by the gang team. Does not necessarily mean there was a gang enhancement alleged, but that just means the gang team reviewed the case and filed it versus a different unit in the office. And likewise, of the 69, it just means the juvenile team reviewed the case and filed that charge versus some other unit in the office.
So if we subtract those two numbers from 592, what is the status of those remaining people? 592 minus 69 plus 18.
I mean, they're active cases. These individuals were charged with this crime in my office, but they were perhaps charged by our felony unit or our complaints and warrants unit on the first floor. The way the office works is cases get referred to our office. They're not always referred to the same body or unit within the office. So there's a large portion of cases that come through the district attorney's office that are reviewed by the complaints unit, the filing unit. But when cases are specific, for example, a homicide case, it is reviewed by the homicide unit. And if there is some, you saw me in an earlier slide reference referred to the gang unit. So certain cases are referred to the gang unit for review. Those are the cases I usually review. And of those cases referred to the gang unit for review, I filed on 18 of those, or the supervisor before me filed on 18 of those with that specific charge, if that makes sense.
I'm going to look to the sheriff for some further enlightenment, I hope.
I don't know if it'll be enlightenment. I think maybe what's causing confusion to this particular slide, the way I'm reading it, the report that we're being presented is gang activity. This particular slide is showing, especially in the first column, total charges irrelevant of whether a gang member was involved. So those could be a married couple, one assaults the other, classifies as a 245, and out of that, they're getting reviewed by the juvenile team or the gang team. And I think that's important to understand, because when people are looking at this, they may think there's 592 assault with a deadly weapon committed by gang members, and that's not necessarily the way I'm reading it. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That does help a little bit. I think going forward in the report, a little bit more detail and clarity to understand the subsets would be really helpful. But let me move on, because I'm not sure I'm going to fully get there. There was a significant increase in juvenile assaults with a firearm. That's of course very concerning. Is the district attorney's office working to address the fact that more youths are gaining access to firearms?
We currently have a number, and again, I'm not necessarily an expert within this area, but I do know of a number of programs and organizations and projects my office is utilizing. For example, the Gun Violence Task Force is a program within my office where we're making a conservative effort with law enforcement to try to intervene and get guns out of the hands of young people, not necessarily juveniles, young people, before they can be used to commit crimes within our community. And a large part of this is in line with the slide I included about social media and law enforcement's use and utilization of social media. Because social media is so popular with our young people, they put everything on there. They don't even limit the criminal activity that they are freely displaying for others to see. And what I've seen personally in working with law enforcement utilization of social media is essentially this: young people who are on social media, on Instagram or Snapchat, flashing what appears to be loaded firearms, driving through territories, calling out certain neighborhoods with said loaded firearm in view of the camera, hanging out of the window, young people standing in front of a mirror with firearms pointed at said mirror. And then how law enforcement utilizes this information is taking out their search warrant, because it appears to be an unlawful firearm or possession of an unlawful weapon. It can utilize the search warrant and then perhaps confiscate that firearm before it can ever be used. And so it's measures like that that are being implemented and used in it's not perfect, but it's a work in progress.
I appreciate that, thank you. In the past, I know that all youths that may have been in a vehicle, as an example, 6 youths in a vehicle, there's a drive-by shooting, one kid had the gun, but they were all charged with assault with a firearm or with a deadly weapon, even if they weren't physically holding the gun at the time of the event. Is this still the district attorney's practice? And if it's so, how can the data be represented in future reports? Because I don't want a gun charge for 6, I don't know how 6 fit in a car, but I picked that number. For 6 youths, 1 gun to be reflected as 6 deadly assaults with weapons.
Speaking in terms of my experience with the gang unit specifically, it is not the practice of my office to charge everyone in a car with a firearm simply because one person in that car used that firearm in a manner or was caught possessing that firearm unlawfully. It is my practice and the practice of the gang unit, and I believe similarly the practice of my office, to charge only those individuals who we believe the evidence supports charging. That is, if the crime requires we prove youth in that car was actively involved in the process of going to a certain neighborhood, this unloading that firearm, firing that firearm as some gang-motivated crime. If we can prove that, if there is concrete evidence to prove that, then we would charge multiple individuals within that car. But if it's merely evidence that a single individual, perhaps the driver, is driving through a neighborhood and he happens to have 3 of his friends in the car and he sees someone he doesn't like or someone he has a prior confrontation with and he decides to take out that firearm, fire out that car at that individual or at an apartment complex or at another vehicle, it is not our practice to just simply charge everyone in that car. And I can say that definitively in my time in the gang unit for the last 6+ years, that has not been the practice.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. Thank you also for the comments about the social media monitoring work. Do you collaborate with the Public Health Department to address this growing trend?
I personally, as supervisor of the gang unit, do not, Madam Supervisor. I know actually, after receiving this question, I actually went onto the Public Health Department's website myself because I was interested in what programs they provide related to this area. And there's only one I could truly find. They call it the East San Jose Peace Partnership.
Yeah,
and there seems to be some collaboration within my office related to that particular program or service. Now, that's not something that's specific to the gang unit, but it's something where the Public Health Department, utilize community-based organizations in the district attorney's office, in probation, other resources to try again and target communities where crime has largely been statistically a problem and try to reach young people before they enter the legal system. And that's to my knowledge, that's the only current collaboration project, and that's not specific to the gang unit.
Got it. Okay, thank you. The final thing I want to address is back on slide 9. That's the slide that indicates the race of gang suspects. Certainly, yeah, that one. Certainly, the disproportionate representation of Blacks and Hispanics being suspected of and charged with gang crimes is very clear. While the district attorney has the clearest data that illuminates that challenge, it doesn't provide, for my purposes, a useful context or recommendation for how to begin rectifying those disparities. I know that the district attorney and law enforcement partners can work to address the over-policing of Black and Hispanic communities and the charging practices that drive some of the data, but I would like, as a county organization, I would like to see us go deeper with our partners in public health, behavioral health, and others to really understand why kids especially are turning to gangs in the first place. We certainly do know that individuals often join gangs because it provides them with a sense of belonging, with protection, with identity, even with economic support. What I'd like to do is direct that in advance of the next annual report, that the district attorneys share their data once completed with our public health department so that they can have an opportunity to produce an analysis and a recommendation that would help us really address any gaps in our existing services, identify opportunities to address root causes of gang violence. Certainly this is work, and yes, I'm looking at you, Casey, around our efforts for violence prevention from a very holistic perspective. And I would be really interested in both reports being presented together next year. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think Assistant District Attorney Stacey Capps would also like to weigh in here, but what I can say for violence prevention is we can certainly work with the District Attorney's Office to gather this data. As you know, the Public Health Department did a robust report on the cost of gang violence, which included some recommendations which have informed their work in their violence prevention program, but also informed the work of other related violence prevention and intervention programs that, if the board approves it, would fall into the framework of the new department. And so that department can work closely with
with the DA's office and also with public health to do a joint report on how this data can be used to better inform intervention strategies as it relates to youth and also to youth gang and gun violence.
Interesting. Thank you. Stacy and then Damon.
Sure. So I look forward to working on that issue. I think it's an issue we've tried to address in many different areas in juvenile court as well as different community meetings. We are constantly talking about this disproportionality. I want to just comment, though, briefly. You used the word over-policing, and I think one of the issues that we have really delved into at the DA's office is to try to prevent over-policing, to try and prevent gang charging based on over-policing of certain communities. So a number of things have happened. We have reduced the number of gang enhancements that we charge drastically in the office. We typically only charge gang enhancements now on violent crimes. And we're not charging them, truly, we're very rarely charging the gang enhancement on simple possession of a firearm anymore. We are not charging it on typically property crimes anymore, except in very specific circumstances. So it's truly being charged now in violent crimes, and that has been the case for at least the last 6 years or longer. And when you look at those violent crimes, it is not a matter of police officers being in a certain community. Those are the result of 911 calls saying somebody has been shot or stabbed. So I want to be very clear on that. In addressing this consistent disproportionality, it takes a village. This is not something the DA's office can cure on
Absolutely
its own.
not.
And so I do think that it does take a really comprehensive look by behavioral health. In fact, I think it really, one of the things that we want to do, but to be honest with you, it's very time, it takes a lot of time to look at all of these individuals that we've charged. Really what we need to do is look at their entire history. What happened to them as a child? What are the root causes that we can look at? That takes a lot of time to do. And so it's not something that we've had the benefit of doing in the past. I think it's something that we would like to do because I do think we need to be really, really honest about what are the consistent root causes that continue to have these children decide to become involved in a gang.
Absolutely. And I think that is the role of the partners of public health, of behavioral health, of the Office of Supportive Housing, because I imagine a lot of this comes to deep poverty, chronic stress from the very beginning. So I really appreciate the response and your openness to working across departments. It frustrates me to no end that so much of our funding is mandated to be spent on the deepest end services, and we consistently, by necessity, underfund prevention and early intervention.
Agreed.
And I don't know how to figure that out in the moment, but it is clearly where we need to go for meaningfully safer communities. So thank you
We need
for
to address
all
it
of your
at a
comments.
much, much younger age than we've been addressing it.
100% agreed. Thank you. Damon.
Thank you. Ms. Williams, thank you for presenting. I know that this is a topic that is certainly important to us and I think really important to the community, so appreciate you putting this together and also including it contextually with the report last year. I did want to ask one or two questions related to slide 9, and without going to slide 10, I appreciate as Ms. Capps raised the information on slide 10 in highlighting that communities of color are predominantly or disproportionately impacted by behavior that's certainly characterized as gang-related behavior. And I agree, and I think we probably all agree, not only takes a village, but putting behavior in context and an individual's historic background is important, and that's why we have all the discussions we have about mitigation and how cases ultimately resolve. So I applaud all of that as part of the conversation. In the spirit of transparency, and honestly, in my efforts to try and decipher this particular chart, and I apologize, I am not a statistician, and I kept trying to figure out that final column, the percentages, and adding them up. and kind of comparing it to the information on the following slide where we highlight that 95% of the people impacted by gang-related behavior are communities of color. If I'm adding up and looking at the basically the third data column, the one number of suspects charged, if I'm understanding that correctly, in essence, there were 60 suspects charged. One was white and everyone else was from communities of color. Is that correct? Is that a correct deciphering of that chart?
Charged with a gang enhancement, yes.
With a gang enhancement.
Yes.
And if I were to put that in a raw percentage similar to slide number 10, that would mean that 98% of the people charged with a gang enhancement are from communities of color. 60 with one white person, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure I was understanding that information accurately. The other point I just wanted to make sure I understood was the asterisks you put at the bottom, and I think it appears on other slides, which is some comparison data, which I actually appreciate. It shows us some trends. The comparison data from the year before, but I wanted to make sure, and this triggered my memory from last year, is the data from the year before covered more than a 12-month period, correct? It's from January 1st, 2024 through March 1st, 2025, a couple extra months. So even if we're putting this in context and trends, we need to be mindful of the fact that there's a couple extra months of data and data collection from that prior report. Correct?
That's correct, and that's something I considered. This hearing or presentation was originally scheduled for April, and so with that in mind, I had this data pulled up until March because at the time I was thinking I was going to give this presentation in April. So knowing that it's now May, I could have added another month or so of data. And I also contemplated using similar dates as last year. That is to start with, go back to January of 2025 and go through March of 2026. But then there was the issue with overlapping data. And so I just thought it made more sense to just stick with a year.
I appreciate that. I can remember us discussing that last year. So thank you. Those were my only questions.
So to your point, though, Damon, I am not a statistician either, and these reports are for the public. So I would also recommend maybe previewing them with somebody who is outside of your department and doesn't is more typical of a member of the public, to make sure that it is clear to all of us. I respect that it's clear to you, but we're still all shaking our heads a little bit. Sheriff Johnson.
Yeah, more of a inquiry, I guess, on the process. I think earlier in the report you referred to, or the report refers to 19% of the juveniles that are charged didn't have a prior charging as a juvenile. And my question, just for clarification, when you say charging, does that mean they also did not have a prior arrest, or they just weren't charged with a juvenile crime?
I believe the way I requested the data, and I can double check this, was specific to charging, not necessarily arrest. In the sense that once someone is charged as a juvenile, there's different services they can utilize from within the legal system to try and put them on a better path or track and get them out of the legal system. So in terms of this particular data, I think we relied specifically on individuals who had been charged and didn't necessarily look into whether or not they had been previously arrested.
Because I think that's our opportunity, to the supervisor's point, of really, and I know you do this, but of connecting not only with the services and programs, but identifying, trying to prevent them from being charged as an adult with a criminal gang enhancement. And I also think, and I base this on experience from Los Angeles in my career in working with gangs down there, is that there's a tremendous undereducation of what gang enhancement truly means for family members. And I think educating family members early on of what that impact would do, because it is pretty significant to have somebody convicted with a gang enhancement. And for those that may or may not know, it's several years potentially added on to their sentencing. And what I found in LA was that a lot of family members weren't aware of what a gang enhancement would do. But that awareness became very powerful as a deterrent to make sure their son or daughter understood it as well, is that if you commit a crime as a gang member, another crime, there's this potential and a high probability it could be a gang enhancement, which would dramatically change their life forever. I think any crime would change their life, but that could be a very good, powerful deterrent in educating family members early on of the direction their son or daughter may be going if they were to continue that type of behavior. Because the 1% that I think you spoke about, or less than 1% being charged with gang enhancement, that's great, but we're also seeing pretty drastic increase in gun-related violence. So again, I'm hoping that as a community, we're taking all of this and factoring it in, because that number that the supervisor brought up is almost double what it was the year before for the amount of offenses charged with assault with a firearm, and it's way beyond that for juveniles charged with a firearm. So again, I'm hoping we can and if my office can help in any way from the educational piece, we'd be very interested in that.
Thank you. Can I just make a comment as to that, sir? Again, I am the supervisor of the gang unit, and our juvenile team obviously make filing decisions as to some juvenile cases and gang enhancement and gang charges that I'm not privy to. And I believe there are programs in place that our juvenile team utilizes, to just your point, to try to get in before there's a problem. That is going out to schools or going out to community events, having DAs present there to meet with family members and parents. But I do agree that it could be hugely helpful to have even someone like myself from the actual gang unit make an effort to go out in the community, in schools where we know this is a problem, in neighborhoods in certain portions of town that we know this is a problem, and actually just talk. As someone who come from an environment, who grew up in an environment similar to this, just have a conversation with people and let them make them understand, or give them an opportunity to understand what the consequences could be down the road, merely based on a decision their young person makes fairly early in life.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And just for clarity for the community, I'm not saying we're to take on a scared straight type of approach, but it really is important for people to understand the awareness, because I think when we saw a change in some of the sentencing for juveniles with some of the recent propositions over the last decade, there's a lot of community members that are taking advantage, in my opinion, of juveniles to commit crime. And again, I think it's important for the family members to know that the consequences of their son or daughter being involved in that level of activity.
Supervisor, do you mind if I comment on something related to that?
Please, Stacy.
So Sheriff Johnson, I appreciate that very much, but I'll challenge you to actually, I think honestly, when we're dealing with such young people, saying to them, as an adult, you may face additional punishment for the gang enhancement, is not having as great of an impact as if we describe to them what it's going to be like in custody. So I think really truly explaining to these individuals, this is what it's like to be in custody, either in a juvenile facility or an adult facility. As a gang member, you will be forced to commit acts of violence, and you will be subject to acts of violence, I think is going to be more impactful to them than saying you may or may not get an additional 2 years. And juveniles will not get that additional punishment. So, I mean, honestly, I think that the thing that deters the individuals who do go into custody, that deter them from continuing to go into custody for this, is realizing that you will not be protected by your gang once you're in custody. You will be forced to become more violent.
Oh, no, I totally agree with you. And I mean, we could go down a whole different path of scared straight type programs, and those are very effective in my experience of actually taking at-risk youth into a custody facility to see what the environment is like. A mortuary was also part of that component that we did, so they could understand the consequences of using a firearm. Sometimes they don't really visualize the outcome close up because, to your point or comment, drive-bys occur, but they don't actually stand over somebody that they just took the life of. And when they see those bodies in a mortuary, it can change things. But again, that's a whole nother conversation for another time.
I appreciate that, and just realize that we have one more item which may also be meaty, and we have 15
minutes in our allotted time. So I am going to, if I didn't already, make a motion to receive this report with the direction to have a partnership with Public Health that will come back and report simultaneously next year. And I hope that it's been helpful to you, Irene, the feedback around what may make this report a little bit clearer for public purposes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, I'll go and second that, and I do have some questions on
Oh,
slide 9.
I'm so sorry.
Sure, sure.
I didn't realize you were.
Yes, so slide 9, I think there caused a lot of confusion. If we can go back to that again, regarding the juveniles charged and adults charged. Let me go back that page. No, keep going. That's not the one. Yeah,
Yeah, that's up there. That's the one.
no, this guy. The
Yes.
one.
Oh.
The one that says charging involving crimes of violence, maybe it's a different page.
I'm sorry. I thought that was.
That's okay.
There it is.
Okay, there we go. My suggestion is, I think we need to add a column that says total offenders charged with gang specifically. I think once you add that column, then the other two add up to that, I think would eliminate all of the confusion we just talked about. So that was my unsolicited advice. Second thing is, what really disturbed me on this chart is the juvenile charge number of what was in the last cycle of 14 months versus where we're right now. Assault of deadly weapon, over 2x. Assault of a firearm is 12 times. And you keep going down, attempted murder is 2x. Battery causing GBI is 10x. Discharging firearm is 4x. What I'm looking at is there's a lot more charges against juveniles suddenly this year based on gang issues. And then I'm trying to find out, is there a true increase of these type of crimes that are gang-related, or is this something to do with the way charging has changed between last year and this year? So that's certainly something I'm very concerned. I'm looking for Damon as well, and he has that concerned look as well as me.
I think that's a great question, and I honestly don't have the answer, and there are ways to explore that, but I suspect Stacy may have a response as well.
Sure, Supervisor Lee. I think I'm going to be speaking slightly anecdotally, but we typically see the juveniles that are charged with violent crimes in our county to be gang-related. So this increase, I suspect, is related to gang activity. And this is just a one-year snapshot, though, so I think it's also problematic if you take a one-year snapshot and say, overall, kids are committing more violent crimes. I think there are particularly violent years for gang-related crimes. Something happens, and then there's automatic retaliation, and then there's gang violence within the custodial facilities that spills out onto the streets. That's just what we see. So last year was a particularly violent year, it appears, for juveniles. Whether or not that will occur next year, we don't know. So it's really hard. It seems to kind of go up and down year by year when you're talking about gang-related violent crime.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at trends, right? I mean, 1 year does not make a trend, but at the same time, it certainly is disconcerting because if 2x is bad, but we're talking like 10 and 12x, the numbers are just so extremely large. So I don't know if there's anything you can bring back to this committee in the future report to try to find out what the root causes, or at least explain the reason why these changes have taken place in this past year. I think there's more to learn about so that we can hopefully reduce it in the future. That's what I'm looking at. More of a prevention eye here, not really criticizing this report so much.
At the end of the day, I don't know that I'm ever going to be qualified to make those determinations. What are the root cause of a particular increase in gang violence? I can make informed guesses. I do think the fact that punishment for juveniles has changed dramatically has an impact. But to really ask the DA's office to report back on what is the root cause of an increase in gang violence is something that I don't feel like we are qualified to make that. I mean, I do think...
Who do you think would be good? Because, I mean, obviously, we need to find out the problem. We can just leave it as is, right? So who do you think would be
Well,
best?
I do
and we
think
can come back
Ellenberg has
with-
suggested
yeah.
that we collaborate with certain groups to maybe try and do that.
Yes.
But that's not something that this report solely produced by the DA's office would be able to do.
Sure. Casey.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I believe that the motion that Chair Ellenberg put forward, I think, is exactly what you're talking about, Supervisor, which is to say that I think it's going to be a group and collaboration between multiple departments. I think the District Attorney's Office is a critical voice in that conversation. They are prosecuting these cases. They have the data. They have a very unique lens in which they see this information. And I also think bringing in public health, behavioral health, Office of Supportive Housing, and other violence prevention and intervention programs to talk about root causes, potentially to update some of the data that we have from the public health report on the cost of gun violence, but also to think about some of the strategies that we know have worked in areas like South County and also through the East Side Partnership. So we can come back as a group and do that presentation. I think public health would be important, but I think other related departments as needed too, to be brought in.
Good, thank you. I think this is what I'm hoping to do, really submit it from the lens of prevention of how we could avoid this in the future. Thank you. That's all I have.
That's exactly what I asked for. Thank you, and thank you for the second. Let's vote.
Vice Chairperson Lee?
Aye.
Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Our final item is item 10, which is to receive a report again from the Office of the District Attorney and Santa Clara Valley Healthcare relating to intimate partner violence, forensic exams, and strangulation protocols. And I just have to request that we say strangulation prevention protocols. It just, every time I read it, doesn't feel like that's what we're doing. Yes, sir.
I'm going to give you a little background, but this
I appreciate it.
is not about strangulation prevention. It is about addressing strangulation when it happens in the community and making sure that victims get the services that they need and that offenders are held accountable. So let me just give you a little background,
clarification.
a
Thank
little bit. So I'm James Gibbon Shapiro. I'm an assistant district attorney for the Family Violence Team and Victim Services at the DA's office. We've seen a sea change in our county in the way we address when someone, usually a man, puts his hands on a woman's neck and squeezes until she loses consciousness. A few years ago, you'd see that in a police report as the victim states she was choked out and the officer observed redness. Research shows that this is both a huge injury to the woman and a huge indicator that he might kill her. Our cases, in the prosecution of these, we're struggling. We're struggling to address the seriousness of the cases, and we're struggling to show what actually happened in court. So the DA's office brought together the SAFE program, police agencies, victim advocacy nonprofits, and first with a limited pilot, then with a standalone protocol. We've got now a really well-organized response to these kinds of strangulation crimes. First, the officer in the field, when he's receiving a report that someone was choked, offers the victim free transportation and a free strangulation forensic exam and follow-up care. And Anton's team at Valley Medical Center do that forensic exam and provide that follow-up care, and victim advocacy through community-based organizations provide in-person victim advocacy for the victim when she's there. That sea change has occurred in just a few short years, and what's happening right now is that victims are getting crucial medical care that they need, and police are investigating, and the prosecutions that are happening are more effective than just an observation of redness. We have a medical report about what the injuries are to both evaluate for the seriousness of the crimes we're going to charge and to present those cases in court. I'm happy to say that last fall, the police chiefs, in adopting the 2025 Domestic Violence Protocol for Law Enforcement, incorporated the strangulation protocol into the countywide domestic violence protocol as the standard practice for police agencies in the investigation of domestic violence cases. We've made huge progress in a few years, and we have more to come, and I'm delighted to turn it over to Nurse Manager Anna Anton from our Safe Plus program.
Thank you, James. And I will just add, to go along with the data that you have there in your ledge file, the data for this year, to coincide with what James shared about incorporation into the countywide protocol. The data for this year is showing an increase in the utilization of forensic exams for intimate partner violence. So you'll see in the report, there was a decline in 2025, but in 2026 so far, we are seeing an increase in utilization.
Thank
We're
you.
happy to accept any questions.
Great. And James, thank you very much for the clarity for me. I realized as you were saying it, that of course that's exactly right. This is really painful work to even talk about, but so critical. I have just a couple of questions.
Sure.
The chart on page 2 says Morgan Hill had 133.33% strangulation cases. Is that
Yes, I can
an
explain that.
increase or an increase in cases? Or
So what this chart is, and it is not reflected in 2025 because we do not yet have the calls for service data for 2025, but in 2024, that percentage greater than 100% was because our team at Valley Medical Center saw more cases out of Morgan Hill than were received for calls for service, which could mean that maybe some of those cases didn't have a primary allegation of domestic violence, or they came directly to the emergency department, and we were the first ones to see them without a 911 call for service.
Thank you so much. That's super clear. I was surprised by the comparative data of our jurisdiction to Alameda and Orange County, LA County. Certainly the population in the southern counties is much, much larger than ours. Do we think those counties are underreporting? I would find it hard to believe that our rate of DV strangulations is double theirs, or are we really looking for it and protecting?
I think as James shared earlier, and he can add to this, I'm sure, the Board of Supervisors and this county implemented this as a pilot program back in 2020 and then expanded it throughout the county in 2022 prior to statewide legislation around the topic. So this county was an early adopter of this work.
Thank you. That was led by my former colleague, Supervisor Chavez, if I'm not mistaken. Public Health, I know, has run a number of violence prevention campaigns, including one targeted to prevent teen dating violence. I know I'm more and more thinking that maybe Public Health, they don't need another meeting to go to, but having that voice in public safety and justice,
Sure.
I feel would really round us out. Can you provide any update, Casey, and it's fine if not, on what Public Health is currently doing to educate the community, or James in coordination with your office, to educate the community earlier on the seriousness of strangulation and the accompanying increase in lethality?
Yeah, I'm sure Assistant District Attorney James Gibbons-Shapiro may want to add to this. What I'll say, and I don't mean to speak on behalf of Dr. Rudman here, but I know Public Health has a lot of engagement with prevention and education campaigns in the county. They do this primarily through coordinated work with promotoras and other community groups that are doing this education in community on teen dating violence, on strangulation, on lethality and lethality markers. I just also want to lift up, we think about this, I think, in to James's earlier point, we see this a lot with female victims and male offenders. I also just want to note that there's an incredible safety risk to especially young children when it comes to strangulation. That is a lethality risk for homicide. It's also a lethality risk for child abuse. We had a recent case where a woman went through a strangulation exam, and because of that exam, because of the findings, because of the education, was able to return back the next day when she had a more significant complication, and there were children that were in the home. So I think also this has to do with child safety, child well-being, and so it is public health. It's also broader than that, to say that DFCS is also doing engagement work around domestic violence, strangulation, dating violence, safe dating, lethality risks, because of not just the risk to victims, but also to the broader family. And I think this is a point that Supervisor, you and I have said before around economic empowerment for women in violence prevention, how to help young women and victims achieve greater financial support and access to our preventive services, so that the reality for them is that they don't have to stay in these relationships that pose such a great risk to them and their children.
Thank you very much. Just as I asked for the previous report to return to us in its next cycle in cooperation with public health, I would love to see that in this case as well, so that we are really thinking holistically and understanding what we're doing across departments. Really thank you for that. I forgot to take public comment, but happy to hear from you first, Supervisor Lee, and then go to the public.
Let's go to public first.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Nancy.
There are 4 requests to speak on Zoom. Our first speaker is Lisette. Please accept the unmute. You have 2 minutes to speak. If you have a device on it in addition to your phone, please mute.
My name is Lisette Gabriel, and I'm here representing Community Solutions and DVAC to speak about the urgent need for continued support for non-fatal strangulation response services for survivors of intimate partner violence. Non-fatal strangulation is one of the strongest predictors of future homicide. Survivors often arrive terrified, isolated, and in crisis. Having an advocate physically present during these exams can mean the difference between facing that experience alone or with safety, support, and connection to care. Community Solutions serves as a point agency, coordinating in-person advocate response for strangulation exams across the county in partnership with the YWCA Golden Gate Silicon Valley. Together, we operate a rotating response system, while Community Solutions exclusively covers South County due to the significant and growing need. In 2025, we accompanied 66 survivors. Since January of 2026, we have already served 36. Just 2 weeks ago, we received 4 referrals, 3 of those in South County alone. One recent survivor required support from 5 advocates, more than 80 hours of in-person accompaniment, and another 20 hours of case management, systems of advocacy, and supervisory support. These are not just numbers, they represent survivors whose lives may depend on whether someone shows up when they need the help the most. Thank you.
The next speaker is Maria Moreno. Please accept the unmute. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me? As an advocate, I have walked alongside survivors of strangulation into hospital rooms, often at moments when they are scared, confused, and unaware of how close they may have come to losing their lives. I have worked with clients who believed their symptoms were minor. They told me their neck hurt, that their eyes had small red spots, or that their voice sounded different, like a horse and trained. To them, it did not seem urgent. They did not realize the gravity of what their bodies had endured. But what we later learned was much more serious. One client had significant injury to the muscles connecting her neck to her head and trauma to her trachea, which affect her ability to speak. Another suffered a rupture of blood vessel that lead to internal bleeding. These are not visible wounds. They are no clear signs that signal the danger, and yet these injuries can be life-threatening. What stayed with me is that both survivors initially minimized what had happened to them. They did not know the risk. They did not know they need urgent medical care. This is why our work matters. Advocacy, education, and immediate response can truly save lives. When we recognize the signs and act quickly, we give survivors not only validation, but a change to survive and heal. Thank you for your commitment to protecting and supporting survivors in your community.
Next speaker is Perla Flores. Please accept the unmute. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, supervisors, and I want to thank the county and especially the DA's office for your leadership in ensuring that survivors of strangulation have access to uninterrupted support. I'm speaking on behalf of Community Solutions and the Domestic Violence Advocacy Consortium. And as we've heard, access to advocacy and support for intimate partner violence survivors during strangulation exams is critical to increasing safety and saving lives. And ensuring that there's this access to 24-hour support is very important. The reason that we see a higher number of strangulation exams from South County, particularly Morgan Hill and Gilroy, is that in South County, Community Solutions advocates can initiate that strangulation exam. We talk to survivors, encourage them to participate in that exam and make sure that they know that we will be there with them. As a result, roughly 80% of survivors that have the exam engage in services. The other message that's really important is that we cannot sustain the safety net services that allow for this type of 24-hour response with the proposed 19% reduction to gender-based violence services. The current DVAC funding levels for this year is $10,047,000, and the proposed funding for next fiscal year is a little bit over $8 million, which again represents a 19% cut. However, the most providers can absorb while still maintaining critical safety net infrastructure is a 10% reduction, which would require funding at approximately $9,135,000. At a time where the community need is increasing, providers are already strained to provide access to this life-saving services, immediate safety, emergency housing, advocacy, and the long-term support that saves lives. So we ask the county for your continued support to ensure that we can provide this critical support following into a partner violence strangulation, and critically the long-term support that really helps survivors heal and secure safety, security, and hope. Thank you.
Our next and final speaker is Kim Gutierrez. Please accept the unmute. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Kim Gutierrez, Program Director with Community Solutions. Thank you for bringing to light and talking about the non-fatal strangulation prevention program to ensure that there is support for our survivors. An in-person response by a confidential advocate, it's a critical life-saving service that ensures that immediate connection to safety planning, information, emergency shelter, basic needs and resources, and increases likelihood of engagement by the survivor in ongoing services and the criminal justice process. In-person responses by an advocate are provided not only for survivors of intimate partner violence and strangulation, but also sexual assault and human trafficking. We know that non-fatal strangulation is one of the strongest predictors of intimate partner homicide. And with that in mind, advocates are completing danger assessments and safety plan around the survivor's unique situation. In 56% of the completed danger assessments that advocates did with survivors, we found that 56% of those survivors were found to be at high or extreme risk of homicide by a current or former partner. Confidential advocates provide immediate support and resources to not only adult survivors of strangulation, but also for minor survivors and their protective family members. Community Solutions supported a minor through their forensic medical exam and follow-up appointments. Advocates from not only the strangulation program, but also our CSEC program were able to wrap around this young person and their family to provide intensive services, including peer counseling, advocacy to criminal justice partners, financial assistance, and more. Thank you for your continued commitment to survivors experiencing non-fatal strangulation.
That was our final speaker.
Thank you so much. Supervisor Lee, your comments.
Thank you. Wrong mic.
2 microphones?
Yes, 2 microphones. Yes, first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for the report coming back based on a lot of the questions I asked last time, and it was very helpful and interesting to see the comparison with the other counties, whether it's Southern California or the one in Alameda. Interesting to see that the way how data is collected in Alameda is very different. So in some ways, it's almost apples and oranges. I'm not saying that our rate is just very high, but at the same time, clearly, a couple of takeaway is that the need for these services are very high. Number one. Number two is that these are not just minor misdemeanor cases. These are attempted manslaughter, attempted murders, basically, and they just survived. So I think it's so important that the district attorney's office is taking these cases very seriously, and that the victims needs the protection to avoid from being the victim in a few weeks or a few months because of these incidents. So I somewhat see it as almost analogous to how folks survive like a Narcan episode, that they live because of that. And this to me is like they just lived of a very, very near-death incident. So I really do think that this report is very important, and this service is so critical to literally saving lives in our community. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to receive the report, and the next time it comes back to do so in partnership with an analysis by Public Health or our new Violence Prevention Office.
Thank you.
And second, thank you. I see no lights. Let's vote, please.
Vice Chairperson
Aye.
Lee and Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, both
Thanks
of
so
you,
much
for
for
the
having us.
presentation. Absolutely. Are there, item 11 is for announcements. Do we have any announcements? All right, with that, we are adjourned. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for, pretty soon, Thursday, June 11th at 10 a.m. We are adjourned.